Commence the meeting with the item 22, draft amendments to the Christchurch Central Recovery Plan. Staff have got one slide that they'd like to show us, and then I know James Goff has got some questions, and then we'll just see if there's any other final questions before we move on. Right.
Okay. I'll start.
The mayor did indicate.
I did say.
She did say.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Good afternoon. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval to go to the next step of the Greater Christchurch Regeneration Act process. Now we've put a slide up there just to give you an indication of where we are at in this process. The purpose of these amendments, as we state in the report, are to more effectively achieve the regeneration outcomes of the Christchurch Central Recovery Plan and those that we seek from the Canterbury Multi-Use Arena. By making these changes, we believe we will provide greater certainty for residents, business owners, investors, and also for the operators of the CMUA. In developing the proposed amendments that we have before you today, and as you can see from the attachments in the report, we have engaged with a number of people to arrive at where we are at this point in time. This includes our acoustic advisors, Marshall Day. We have undertaken some public consultation engagement. We've sought preliminary views from strategic partners. We've engaged with VBase as the operator, and through them we have also sought feedback from concert organisers, and we've also, as you can see, considered the rules of venues in other parts of both the city and the country. The next steps are to seek comments from our partners and then to publicly notify. There will be, from there we'll consider the feedback and we'll further finalise the amendments before we come back to you. Today is not the final decision. We're just starting this process, as you can see in front of you. We believe through the engagement that we've undertaken, and that the rules that we've developed are a good evidence base, have a good evidence base beneath them to start this process of engagement. So that's really where we're at. Any questions? James?
Yeah, thanks for that. I know we've taken some of it offline and I appreciate your time beforehand on this, but just a few more for me that have come out of this. First one, would the proposed restrictions on the noise apply for sports and other events, or is it only concerts? Sorry, some of these are just clarifications, just quite simple ones.
Do you want to go?
Yep. So these are only for concerts, and they're only for concerts above 90 decibels. So they're only for the real large concerts. There's smaller concerts that are quieter.
So no limit for an All Blacks test, for example? Cheer as much as you want? Yeah, okay, that's good.
Yep.
The other one, the proposed annual 15 concert limit, and I think you might have almost answered that just before, but just to clarify again, that's purely for concerts, not for All Blacks tests and everything. And
absolutely, and once again, only those loud concerts.
Like or even with how things have changed, like e-games or something like that, it's just concerts.
Just concerts, yeah.
Okay, that's great. The other one, has the 85? Sorry, is it 80 or 85? I've got two. I think it's actually 80 decibels, isn't it? Oh, has the oh no, I see what I'm looking at. I'm getting it confused because it was 85 was a decibel limit for the temporary stadium. That's correct, isn't it? And this is proposing 80.
Yep.
Okay, well that ties into then as far as history goes, since we've had the temporary stadium, has that 85 decibel limit been challenged? And why would we propose a lower decibel limit for a purpose-built, final, closed-roof, designated multi-use arena that's lower than what the temporary stadium was?
Yeah, so the temporary stadium was obviously just a short, well, it's supposed to be just a short-term stadium. It's also a lot more of an open-air stadium. Whilst this one won't be fully enclosed because the roof won't completely block out noise. The temporary stadium could noise could travel further. So it was a slightly different situation with the temporary stadium. It was much harder to mitigate the noise there, and there was recognition at the time that it was for a short period of time. It was just to obviously get the
temporary nature.
The facility open, whereas with this facility is a permanent, long-term facility, so it's a slightly different context.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess, how do you sort of defend when looking at some of the other noise limits where you've got Victoria Street, I think it's 85 decibel limit at, say, 7 a.m, being higher than what the designated stadium is?
Yeah.
So a higher threshold.
Yeah. So I mean, within the stadium, the advice we've had is that to meet that, so that 80 limit is will be measured at monitoring points around the stadium. Actually, within the arena, you can have up to 105 decibels. So it's going to be a lot louder than what you're seeing at other venues.
Okay, no, that's helpful. And the last one is, do you think there would be any merit on consulting on a handful of curfew extensions, essentially giving the operator the ability to pull the trigger if they exercise a best judgment call? Hope this would never happen, but an example, and I again talked about it offline, if we were lucky enough to secure someone like an Elton John who's enjoying this, thinks Christchurch in the arena is the best thing since sliced bread, they're encouraged by doing encores, it's 10 to 11, whoever decided to pull the plug there would have to be shot, surely, if they turn the power off at 11 p.m. So we don't get in hot water, is there an ability to be able to exercise a couple of those leave passes, for lack of a better word? We say we've made a call and we will go past that time, but there was good reason to, so we've elected to use this exemption on this instance.
I think that's probably something that the operator of the venue would need to consider. I'm not sure a district plan would be the vehicle to do that. The other option is to think about a slightly later finishing time, perhaps, but that would be another option.
And is there any precedence, and it's kind of a follow on from that to a certain, it's not actually, it's a final, but the absolute last one then, is there any precedence or merit in even splitting some hours where perhaps in summer months you could go a bit later, which traditionally people might, it's lighter for longer?
So you'll see that in Dunedin during, I think it's during the summer months, that they do finish later. So they have a later closing time or finish time. It goes to midnight, and so there are merits there. There's my understanding is the reasonings behind that was to do with lighting and the level of darkness, if you like, for shows that start at 10 or that sort of time, that are also incorporating some form of lighting display or show with what's going on within. So, and obviously being further south, it gets darker later in Dunedin. So yes, there is some merits, particularly with that type of roof structure, which is obviously transparent of a later time in summer. So that if you're wanting to, if council was wanting to change that at this point, we could do that and mirror, I guess, what they have in Dunedin for the summer months.
Well, competitive advantage.
That's
better
way
what everyone else has got. But that's been really helpful, so thank you.
Aaron?
Yeah, so I had a couple of questions. One is around the decibel limit outside the stadium. What did you say it was? 85?
80.
80. Yet cars can drive past legally at 90 and 95 if your car's registered prior to 2008.
Hopefully
go
not
95.
Continuously.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Christchurch. But yeah, so I'm just, because there's been a lot of discussion in the public around noise limits at a concert.
Yes.
And then you would have seen probably some of the comments, and then my next question. So that can apply. And then my other one is around the limit on days that that we're saying 15.
Yes.
Yet if we had a really successful opening and could bring in one of the best artists in the world, you could have multiple nights when you first open, and then you're limited for the rest of the year.
Yes.
People are asking why 15, why not potentially as many as you need can sell out, can book.
Yep, so that's, as I said in my opening statements, having a limit provides that level of certainty and tries to provide the balance between the regeneration outcomes being sought and the level of disturbance in the for other people in the community. So it's a balancing act, and as I also stated, this is not the final position.
Right.
So absolutely there, and we've seen in some of the feedback we've had through the earlier stages, particularly a number of views were to have a higher number or indeed no limit, and others were obviously a lower number. So what we're doing here is we're entering into a process to get that sort of feedback and take that into consideration.
And for major events, what would happen if, like, because we wouldn't bid now, but if we were to go for an event like World Expo, and you'd need to do possibly 100 nights in your 6 months that the Expo's open, what would you do? Would you just go for 15?
They're not major events.
They're not concerts.
Oh, well, no, at World Expo they had, not Elton John, they had like John Farnham and that kind of thing were all playing there. I'd call that relatively major. Like, you wouldn't put them in a paddock. You'd go for your main venue to guarantee the... I'm just throwing up scenarios that could happen, not saying that we would bid now, because 15 wouldn't make a successful Expo.
So there is an ability, this doesn't have to be set in stone forever and never changed. There is other processes, and that's how a lot of stadiums operate. They go through maybe a consenting process, or could vary the designation to if we saw that there was a big event coming up, and we could change these rules. At the moment, based on the advice that we've received, and we've got V-Base here as well, that 15 is a reasonable number in terms of what is likely to have. In fact, it's far more than what has previously come across.
So if we were to be lucky enough to secure one of those major events that lasted long and you needed lots of nights, we could go for a change?
Yes.
You do have plenty of lead-in time.
Yeah. You'd obviously have to go through a public consultation process like we're doing now again, and so it would depend on the outcome of that. But yeah, this doesn't have to be set in stone forever and a day.
And then finally, the last one was following from one of James's around that finishing time of 11. What, say, due to unforeseen circumstances, something else has happened in the evening that could be the fault of the promoter or not, or the act or whoever, that delays the evening, do they have to cut their set short? Or will there be an exemption when it's not their fault or their fault? But the ticket payer, it's definitely not their fault.
No, it's not the ticket payer's fault. We're talking about rules that go into the district plan.
Yep.
You're talking about an enforcement process. So I guess that the outcome of running over what's in the district plan would need to be considered through the enforcement process. Can we?
So the enforcement is, if they, like, say, whatever happens, they've had to go 30 minutes over on a particular event, does the one guy from Armaguard turn up and ask them to turn it down? He'll be back in 30 minutes. I'll take my time. I mean, because that's simple then. Because
I might ask V-Base, do you have a comment on that, or
is it just a standard fine? It's not that bad.
Well, we're the enforcement.
Caroline, would you like to come forward?
I mean, it's really a practical.
These scenarios, we've been having concerts in Christchurch for a long, long time. I've been involved with most of them, and these issues have come up, but they've always been reasonable.
Yeah.
And so it's never gone to that extent. And when you're looking at Lancaster Park, which was open right next to residential, it was always managed extremely well by both council and the promoters, etc. So And and that's that link between council and the local community. Well, it's true. So the scenarios that we're talking about, it might happen, and that there have been a couple of have actually gone over the noise, etc. But it's always been managed well, and it hasn't been going for a long time. It didn't go over for a long time because part of the strategy is you don't want the concerts going too late because you do want those punters to go into town and spread the love.
That's right.
So anyway,
That was always
sorry,
the intention.
Caroline, I'll leave.
Carolyn, do you want to comment on that?
I think any time that you can foresee a concert going beyond that 11 p.m, say, you would ask for an exemption prior. I obviously can't comment on the enforcement. I haven't been in that situation. But I think an unforeseen circumstance would be one, and I think common sense would have to prevail, and that you would just manage that at the time. And I think it would be an unlikely situation that an enforcement would apply in an unforeseen circumstance.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. Anything where there's any risk, residential, key stakeholder engagement is really, really critical to all of that.
Yeah, the paper refers to the operator engaging with the community ahead of any of these major concerts, so you would anticipate that to be a core feature of your role?
Yeah, and we certainly do that now, and particularly when it comes to big concerts and we're thinking traffic management plans and noise, it's always about engagement with the local residents and the local community.
And since you're here, do you want to talk about the number of concerts? Because I think I read somewhere in the paper that this was a restriction. This is over one a month. It's an ambitious expectation for me, but can you perhaps comment on that?
To give it a bit of context, these are 15 big, noisy concerts, so we're not talking Super Rugby, Mitre 10 Rugby, All Blacks, Nitro Circus, Cirque du Soleil, all of those other events that you can imagine filling the calendar. So another 15 quite big, noisy events is actually quite an ambitious target. Great to have. And just probably another bit of context. So you think Spark Arena in Auckland, they do 10 to 15 full mode shows a year. And that's 10 to 15,000 people. And in broader Auckland, there's about 6 or 7 on average annually in the big open air stadium. So, it's pretty rare that a promoter would bypass Auckland. And so for us to have an additional 15 big shows is actually, it's pretty good. And 4 Bar in Dunedin, they do 4 on average per annum. So it gives a bit of context to kind of that number, because, it does, when you think about it as 15, especially if you think you get 4 Ed Sheerans or 3 Adeles, but to actually look at that broader context, it does bring it into perspective a little.
Yanni, Sam?
Yeah, thanks. I think I read somewhere here, this is the most permissive noise restrictions out of any stadium in New Zealand. That's...
Yeah, bar North Harbour, but North Harbour is in an industrial area. So,
right.
yeah,
Okay.
it's
just wanted to check in the public interest section under section 38.2, it talks about the different people that will be impacted, but the one group that seems to be missing, which I know we've raised repeatedly through this process, is the other venue operators in close proximity. So I just don't see any consideration of how that will work, and I guess I just remember getting complaints previously when we've had something happening and the impact on shows at the Theatre Royal, for example, or maybe at the new town or the repaired town hall. So, are you able just to give us some degree of comfort around how that conflict can be managed through what's being proposed?
Sure. I've asked that specific question of our acoustic experts in terms of the impact of noise on the likes of Theatre Royal or the Town Hall or other venues, and also in particular bass noise as well, because that can be a problem. I'm assured that the noise levels that we've suggested in this report, and both the distance and the screening that results from other buildings, mitigates that issue, so it is not an issue. And then there was also, I was advised that the likes of the Theatre Royal and the Town Hall are built and designed specifically to keep noise out. So that's part of the detail of the construction, is to, because you've got roads outside and all of those other things. So that is not an issue.
So, because I've read in the report that said sometimes people can hear 6 to 8 kilometres away, and I think previously we've had the heat song, they have had issues with the noise. We've also got the Court Theatre, the Calling Arts Precinct, the piano.
So I've asked that specific question. I've been reassured that that would not be an issue.
Yep.
I was actually involved with one of the shows that was affected through Showbiz, and our specialist soloists from overseas could actually pick up a slight doof from the. But keeping in mind that event was just at the end of the road on a just a paddock basically. This is a
It's me.
yeah, that's a Zubu bringing the food. So you know, there was always a concern, but there is a difference. The complaints that we were dealing with at that time was a doof and a paddock just down the road. This is a purpose-built stadia, so you know there is a slight difference.
Yeah, but this is a
Very lightweight roof that will not keep sound in.
No,
But part of that, the issue at the Theatre Royal was the actual ground vibe. You know, it was actually coming through. So
Okay. The other question I had was in regards to the economic cost on the existing residential. I was just trying to get my head around it. In the report, it talks a lot about most of the buildings in the area, I think, that have been new builds since the earthquake have pretty solid cladding that will mitigate some of the noise.
There's noise insulation requirements, yes.
But there's areas that we haven't had that requirement on that we're now going to include. And just knowing some of the typology, I guess some of the, you know, dense townhouses that have been built wouldn't appear to have very high levels of existing insulation. But is that something that we should be concerned about? And the cost that's associated, I think it's about $22,000, between $7,000 and $22,000. Do we know kind of roughly how many properties will have an increase cost if they need to retrofit? And is any budget provision or liability on us around that?
So, the thing to make clear on this does not require anyone to retrofit their buildings. This only applies to new buildings that are built within that area.
Yeah.
So, these costs, I mean, as you say, a lot of the areas already require this insulation anyway. There's already, with the building code, there's already requirements for thermal insulation as well, which also deals with the noise. So the actual additional cost, from what we've been advised, is not going to be that significant because of all the other requirements they have to meet, healthy homes and that kind of thing, at the moment anyway. So this is just for new builds, not for existing.
It's just
Not
that we
retrospective.
constantly hear from developers that it's too hard to build in the central city, and that's why we've got the DC rebate, and that would seem to be about the same quantum that they may have to spend on the noise mitigation.
Well, there have been noise
Noise mitigation provisions
for
are already
some
in
time.
place.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
came in 2014 after the...
No. There's a whole new area that's been classified.
Yes,
that
I
will
have read the report. Thank you, Yanni. That's very helpful. But in terms of the ones that have been built
Yeah.
in that area have been built to the new standard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So are there any more questions? Have I got someone to move the... yeah, okay, that's fine. Just,
Sorry, may I just, did you want to change the summer time? Sorry. The 11 o'clock to midnight in summer months, or did you not?
Thanks. Can you just explain to me, sorry, really clearly, just once more, how easy it is to get an exemption? So if we have that limit at 11, and for argument's sake, Elton John is in town, like James said, and they want to go to 12, how difficult is it to get that?
So if we know beforehand, then there would be we'd have to go through a consenting process to do that. So
Bruce Springsteen played over the limit for that. Did you get a warning, or did you get a breached resource consent thing and a fine imposed on you?
I don't believe we had a fine. I think, and it was obviously before my time, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but as far as I understand, we can get exemptions with relative ease if we do consult with residents, and it's...
He just refused to leave the stage. I wasn't there, sadly.
We work on the
but,
fade model.
yeah.
Tim knows
But that
all
is
this.
the real question. I mean, if we were to change it to midnight over the summer or whatever.
I wouldn't want them all to be midnight. The whole point
No,
of this is
that's-
to allow the central city businesses
once I'm
to
agreeing with you,
benefit.
right? Once I'm agreeing with you.
I think that's something that we
The-
can work on.
Yeah, so, but can we be clear that the council wouldn't be a barrier to exemptions?
Well, it could be.
Well, I mean, you'd deal with that as you would normally would. I think Brent.
You'll
might
get
be
a
able
nice
Brent might be
letter.
able to help us with a legal thing.
Get
Are
a
we
nice letter,
able
won't you,
to
Tim?
allow a degree of
a vague
flexibility
approach.
for exemptions?
A nice
I
letter.
can't
Please
say
don't
what
do it
the
again.
answer will be on a resource consent application, but
No.
as you've said, it would require an application for a resource consent to do something that the plan doesn't allow. But we're talking about a permitted activity standard in the plan, a permitted activity standard. 99% of resource consent applications are granted on a non-notified basis.
Exactly.
I don't know whether that gives
Yep.
any indication
People
of
don't
what
get
the
a
merits
say.
will be of this one, but that does happen.
So it shouldn't be a high barrier.
Cool.
And I think it's a relative exception rather than the rule. You know, I think 11 o'clock is actually relatively reasonable.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought it was something that would happen all of the time.
And keeping in mind that we have a very good relationship with the three main promoters, Jeff Jones, Paul Dainty and Michael Densky, who have been the ones that have brought concerts here for the last 10 years. No one else has, but we have a really good relationship with VBase and them, and so there's a lot of forewarning, there's a lot of planning, so any kind of ideas of going over would be dealt with well and truly leading into it. Because remember, the promoters want to leave with everyone smiling because it helps them next time, but it also helps, they realise that they want the venue to be doing really well as well.
I mean, is it possible then to have not a permitted, but the next least restrictive for an additional half hour or something during certain months?
Well, we could change the time. I don't know whether we could. I think perhaps we're worrying about something that's probably not a
Not
big
an
deal.
issue.
Yeah, I think we're trying to find a solution for a problem that doesn't really exist.
Okay.
It's never been an issue in 30 years.
I don't recall it being an issue with Bruce
No.
Springsteen going over time.
Yeah. Let's.
All right. Okay. So do I have somebody who's prepared to move this and second it? And Aaron Kewen, Sam McDonald. Any debate? Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think people concerned that this is somehow restrictive. This is one of the most permissive planning regimes for noise. I just would like to remind councillors of what happened at Ruapuna, where we actually had to go and buy properties out with considerable expense. So I think there could be an issue around this, but this is going out for public feedback, and I think it's really important that we do put it out and get that community input. I think one of the real concerns, though, hopefully when we do the lessons learned, is the fact that we've got a planning regime that's been put in place after decisions are being made about certain anchor projects, and it just seems crazy that a number of the places that are going to be captured in the extension of the rules around noise mitigation are ones that have been built after the earthquake, and it just seems crazy that we didn't actually put the planning rules in at the same time that the Central City Plan was announced in regards to the stadium around noise. So appreciate there's a little work going on to understand the impacts of this, but I think it is kind of a bit of a lost opportunity, the fact that we've got so many new builds. I think in here it says 60% of dwellings that have been built post-earthquake in that zone. So anyway, let's hope that this works, and let's hope that we get good public feedback around the impact. I still have some real concerns about those other groups in the area. I mean, we've heard that they're not going to be impacted, but it is quite hard to understand with a noisy, loud bass. And I would have thought possibly something around scheduling that would put some sort of onus on the operator to not conflict events would be quite useful. But we'll leave and see what people have to say as we go through the submission process. Thank you.
Okay. Aaron, Oh, sorry, I'll get you to close the debate, Aaron, as the mover of the motion. James?
Yeah, just pretty briefly on this. Look, I think 99.9% of people really do want a permissive approach with this, about the stadium or multi-use arena having a competitive advantage, and everyone wants to see it flourish. Everyone wants to ensure that this is most certainly the antithesis of a white elephant, all the way through from the general community to the staff and councillors themselves. So the important thing to remember here is this is getting robust feedback hand in glove with the community, because what's really critical is that we front foot this and that there's things in place that are permissive enough to ensure that the arena flourishes, but not so permissive, or if you have absolutely nothing, that if an inevitable complaint comes, that because you have nothing, something is then imposed on you which will ensure that the arena can't flourish. So I would rather be in the driver's seat all day long with something that can work and that we know will work. And just finally, I'll finish on the curfew. You know, this is really good. The critical element of the Canterbury multi-use arena is that it's an anchor project that is being built with the intent to complement a city. The last thing we want is for the city to be cannibalised by it. So people that want to have a good time in the city, that have got money to spend and want to enjoy themselves, can actually have an ability to do that, and current business owners or even potentially future business owners should be really excited about having 20 to 30,000 people on their doorstep that want to enjoy all that Christchurch Central City has to offer. So complementing the city is the rationale around a curfew, and it's a permissive curfew. A permissive curfew is being proposed as it is, but that's actually a key element of it.
Aaron?
Yeah, just raise a couple of quick points. One is around a number that Yanni raised, those new builds in the area. A lot of people have bought knowing the stadium was going there. Some will move out of their own place because they can rent it for a premium when the concert's on. So that's a positive to them. And then all the ones that stay there, their cousins and stuff are coming to stay. Mm-hmm. You're going to have people all over your flat or your house or your apartment because you live next door to a stadium. I mean, it's swings and roundabouts. And the other one is, hopefully if the media pick up on this story, which there's not a lot of negatives, so they might not, but if they do, they might go with a positive aspect, that is that, and it was on Yanni's point of how permissive it is, that if we have the problem of being full 15 nights a year, we are very successful. Yeah. So let's aim for some success in this city.
Good. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks. Okay, and the last item for us to deal with in the open agenda is item 39,